a sense of how it's going to work if it was produced. So for this particular shape, it's just a simple cylinder. Obviously last week we had something a bit more complex where I showed you how you can potentially create something a bit more bespoke. For example, a bottle like this where it's got a bit more subtle curves, a bit more of a lid. You can basically just start to take a cross section of the entire shape just very quickly. Just say, for example, that was my shape of my bottle or what I was creating. I could take a cross section and basically cut that shape in half. And from there, if I just quickly make that a bit softer. So hypothetically, if that was half my shape of my bottle, it's basically like taking a slice of a cake or a cross section, and then I can revolve that shape around a 360-degree angle to give me that round three-dimensional image. So for example, that's my cross section. Let's make it a bit thinner. Then I could go to 3D and revolve. So in that particular case, I'm using a revolution 3D effect. In this case, it was just a simple extrude. So I had a flat two-dimensional shape that I added another dimension to. But if I wanted to have something in addition to that, like the dispenser or the shape that we've got as a reference on our actual assessment, something like that, I could then basically just try to replicate that using the 3D tools that I have. So if I'm looking at that, I don't really need to revolve because it's not a symmetrical shape. And I might even just be able to add maybe two elements, one for the bottom portion and one for the top, and just extrude those shapes. So it won't look exactly the same, or it won't be that kind of detail, but I can kind of think about it. Firstly, you might have that long portion, and that might be a little bit more rounded at the front. Maybe the back is a bit wider, for example. Something like that. And then I can use my extrude tools to kind of give it a bit of depth. So it's given me that ability as well to control the depth, so it doesn't need to be that thick. And I could even play around with some of the bevel options to just kind of soften the edges or make it a bit more as expected for that kind of shape, or what I'm thinking in terms of that part of my packaging. And then I can rotate it to an angle that I'm going to be able to reference and use again. So in this case, if I want to add it to this shape, I've got to rotate it and match that perspective. So I might just have a look through these presets and see which one's going to give me the actual angle that I need. So that one looks like it's about right, so isometric top. As a starting point. And I might also just make sure that this one is using that same perspective as well. So we'll go to isometric top. Isometric, right here. So now we're using the same angles basically for those particular 3D shapes. Then what I can do is make the bottom portion. So if we're looking at our reference, it's basically just that top bit and then this additional cylinder basically at the bottom. So I could make it just a standard cylinder, or if I want to use my revolve tool, I can basically just create another shape like that and make it smaller. So maybe it's not an exact cylinder, there might be a little bit of a taper on it or something else that I can do. But in this case, you can see that I just go to my extrude, match up that same perspective with my isometric top. And now I've basically got that bottom portion, and I can just bring that to the front. So visually it looks like it's in the correct perspective. Okay, so now I've got those two shapes. I can just basically move them into position. And if I want to make that one a bit higher, I can just increase the depth slightly. And again, just move it into position. So, like I said, we're not using 3D software. It's just giving us the effect so we can kind of mimic what it's going to look like. But that's basically how you could break down the shapes. So you want to basically look at the object and simplify it to rudimentary or geometric shapes that you can then use 3D tools. Okay? Is that cool? And then I could add more details if I wanted to. Like I've got that starting point, but then I might want to add an additional ring, so I could then do like a circle, for example. Match again that same perspective. Maybe I want to add a bit of a bevel on that so it's a bit softer. And then again I can just kind of add it. And then just change the layers that it's on. So for example, bring that one to the front. Put it into place. And then I might just, again, bring that one to the front as well. Okay. The cool thing about these tools is you can actually change them as well. Like, it's good that I've matched up the perspective so I can maintain that consistency and it's easier for me to maneuver. But just say, for example, I wanted to make that a little bit bigger. Because it's basically just a vector, I can then just make it larger and also reduce the depth if I need to as well. And then just reposition it. Is that cool?
Yeah, it is.
So obviously it's just grey. I can change the colors if I wanted to later. I can also map the graphic like we did before as well. It's a bit of a weird shape, but you get the idea. I didn't really.
Yeah, it was the
I didn't really design it properly, but yeah, you basically get the
Oh,
idea.
you did the
that-
last class. You did nice.
Well, I could, like I said, I can still change it after the fact. Like I can make that a bit thinner. Or even just turn off that kind of bevel that I had before.